There's a lot happening around this team right now, and some of what we're seeing in practice could end up being way more important than it looks in August. We've got one situation that's starting to raise some real questions, a few guys making serious noise, and a defense that looks ready to make life miserable for somebody. So stick with me, because there's definitely a lot to unpack here. And if you're fired up for what's coming this season, hit that like button and drop a SKOL in the comments. Let's see how many real Vikings fans are in here. Something is developing inside Vikings training camp that could become far more important than a typical August practice storyline. And with Minnesota preparing for joint practices against the Baltimore Ravens on Wednesday and Thursday, the timing makes it even more significant. One position on the offensive line is suddenly demanding attention, while elsewhere on this roster, a veteran weapon is showing signs that he could give this offense another dimension. We have to start with Blake Brandel, because the concern surrounding Minnesota's center isn't primarily about whether he's getting beaten as a pass blocker or moved off the football in the running game. It's the snaps. Brandel reportedly had multiple inaccurate snaps during Monday's practice, and according to the information coming out of camp, this isn't something that appeared for the first time yesterday. Shotgun snap accuracy has reportedly been an issue throughout training camp, with concerns even dating back to OTAs. And that's where this becomes something Vikings fans should pay attention to. An offensive lineman can lose a rep. A center can get beaten by a defensive tackle. Those things happen in the NFL. But when the quarterback cannot consistently trust where the football is going to arrive before the play even begins, the problem can affect the timing of the entire offense. Think about a quick receiver screen. The quarterback wants the snap delivered directly into his hands so he can immediately get the football outside. If he has to reach high, low, left, or right just to secure it, even a small delay can change the play. And Brandel's situation has another layer that shouldn't be ignored. He's been asked to do almost everything across Minnesota's offensive line during his career. According to the numbers discussed coming out of practice, Brandel has accumulated significant experience at guard, while also taking snaps at both tackle positions. Center, however, is relatively new territory for him. He only began playing meaningful snaps there last season when he logged 363 snaps at the position. He initially struggled before beginning to settle in. So what we're watching now could simply be another stage in that transition. Learning to play center in the NFL isn't just about blocking the man across from you. The center initiates every offensive play, and consistency with the exchange has to become automatic. But Minnesota doesn't have unlimited time to figure this out. Will Rogatz specifically highlighted the concern surrounding Brandel's shotgun snap accuracy, noting that it has been an issue throughout camp. And that's important because it tells us Monday wasn't simply one ugly practice that should immediately be forgotten. The Vikings clearly entered this process believing Brandel could handle the position. They didn't make a major move at center during the draft, and the available veteran market doesn't present an obvious solution based on the information we're working with. That puts even more attention on the internal options. One name worth monitoring is Gavin Gerhardt, the 7th-round rookie center out of Cincinnati. Gerhardt brings size while also possessing the movement ability that could fit what Minnesota wants to accomplish offensively. Does that mean Brandel is about to lose his job? No. There is nothing in the information from Monday's practice establishing that. But the Vikings now have joint practices against Baltimore coming up, and that creates an interesting test. Brandel is going to have opportunities to show whether the snapping problems can be cleaned up when Minnesota begins working against a different defense. And while that situation creates some anxiety on offense, another development from Monday should have Vikings fans considerably more excited. T.J. Hawkinson was making plays, and not ordinary plays either. Hawkinson reportedly produced an outstanding catch during a 7-on-7 period connecting with Kyler Murray in the back of the end zone. Jason Harmon described it as a great catch, and the play itself featured Hawkinson working up the seam, attacking the football and completing an athletic reception while getting both feet down. Then he wasn't finished. Later in practice, Hawkinson reportedly added another diving catch. That is exactly the type of development Minnesota would love to see from its veteran tight end. Hawkinson restructured his contract during the offseason and enters a season carrying significant pressure to produce. But here's what makes his situation fascinating. Minnesota doesn't necessarily need him to carry the passing game. Look at the number of receiving options around this offense. Justin Jefferson remains the centerpiece. Jordan Addison is another established receiving threat. Jawan Jennings adds another option to the passing attack, and Aaron Jones provides receiving ability out of the backfield. That potentially allows Hawkinson to operate without having to be the entire focal point of what Minnesota wants to accomplish through the air. And that's why Monday matters. If Hawkinson can consistently make contested catches, work the seams, and become a reliable target around the end zone, Minnesota suddenly has another matchup problem opponents have to account for. He doesn't necessarily need enormous receiving numbers to make an impact. Even a season somewhere around 450 or 500 receiving yards could carry real value, depending on how those opportunities are distributed, and, most importantly, what happens in critical situations. Third down, red zone, 2-minute offense. Those are the moments where a dependable tight end can change games. And if the version of Hawkinson making those athletic catches Monday continues appearing throughout camp, Kevin O'Connell could have another piece to move around an offense that already has multiple receiving threats. But there is another side of Monday's practice that may be even more encouraging. Because while we're talking about Brandel's snapping problems and Hawkinson's catches, something was happening on the other side of the football. Minnesota's defense was making life extremely uncomfortable for the quarterbacks. And one veteran cornerback in particular appears determined to remind everyone exactly what he's capable of. Byron Murphy Jr. was making plays. Murphy reportedly intercepted a pass during Monday's practice and continued showing the kind of playmaking ability that made his 2024 performance so important to Minnesota's secondary. That matters because the Vikings have questions at cornerback beyond Murphy. Isaiah Rodgers, James Pierre, and Charles Demings are part of a battle that could ultimately determine who earns Brian Flores' trust opposite Murphy. Demings has generated particularly encouraging attention, but Minnesota still needs somebody from that group to establish himself. That's why a strong version of Byron Murphy Jr. changes the equation. If Murphy can provide legitimate CB1 level play and return to consistently creating opportunities around the football, Flores gains significantly more freedom with everything happening around him. And Monday offered another reminder of why this defense could become one of the defining stories of Minnesota's season. The pressure was relentless. Both quarterbacks reportedly spent much of practice dealing with heavy pressure, and several completed passes may have turned into sacks under actual game conditions, when defenders are allowed to finish the play against the quarterback. Dallas Turner was part of that pressure. Brian Flores' defense was attacking. And this is where the next part of this story becomes particularly interesting, because buried beneath all of these developments is an undrafted rookie who just received one of the clearest signals possible that the Vikings coaching staff wants to see what he can do. He wasn't working exclusively with the third team. He wasn't limited to the second team. Jacob Thomas received snaps with the first-team defense. After what Thomas already did against the New York Giants in the preseason, that development deserves a much closer look. Because if an undrafted safety is suddenly earning first-team opportunities in Brian Flores' defense, the battle for the Vikings' final roster spots may be changing right in front of us. Before we get into exactly what Jacob Thomas's rise could mean, I want to know where Vikings fans stand on the biggest concern from Monday. Are you worried about Blake Brandel's snapping issues, or do you believe he'll clean them up before the regular season? Drop your opinion in the comments because this is becoming one of the most important position battles to monitor in Minnesota. And make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest Vikings news. SKOL Vikings!